This week we'll explore how to do this urban cityscape painting with watercolors. Welcome to my home studio, where I share my passion for watercolor paintings. Today we are going to learn the basics of urban sketching with watercolors. I'll guide you through each step, helping you to capture the light and shadow in an urban setting. We'll explore techniques for creating dynamic composition, loose washes for the buildings, and adding people in the city life. Before we dive in, be sure to hit the subscribe button to become a part of our ever-growing creative community. Now, without further ado, let's get started, everyone. So this is the reference we'll be using for this painting of urban street and urban cityscape of Toronto, and this is taken near King Street. And this was really good because it's a small restaurant and it has really nice shapes of 80% and 20% on two sides. And there's a lighting which is also hitting, and there's also a lot of colors as well. And this also represents really nice of urban street as well. I thought of adding the figure, but I kind of removed it because it's kind of having a tangent with the bicycle rack, and I didn't like where the figure was. Even if I moved it, it didn't fit the composition. So these are the things we have to think, and I usually think before I do my painting. And as for the supply goes, I'll be using Bovang, a rough surface 300 GSM, cotton watercolor paper, and you can use any watercolor paper you want, but make sure it is 300 GSM and 140 lb weight. And for the paints, I'm using Winsor professional grade, and this is the paint I'm usually familiar with. It's usually good to stick with one brand, and this is the brand I stick with, and it's also really affordable for emerging artists like me. And you can also use any watercolor paints you want. So I usually sketch before I'm applying anything on my watercolor paper. And again, when it comes to sketching, I try to simplify what I'm seeing. That's another way of drawing as well. When I started drawing, I was trying to block each individual details on the windows and all of the things within my drawing. But that's not the way to simplify it. The way we can simplify is thinking everything in shapes. For example, the things in foreground, it's a rectangle, and then next to the foreground there's a street walk, which is also a rectangle. So I'm thinking everything in a shape, and how can I simplify it? And I also constantly compare it, and I also change things around, even though and I think you can't see it now, but the fire hydrant, I made it smaller. Even the bike rack I made it smaller because I want to make the shop a little bit wider, and I want to make sure that I fit in all those components as well. And I'm trying to capture the essence of the, and you can also see there's also a twin restaurant scene as well. I also simplified that too. So let's apply our first wash. The first wash is really simple because I want to focus on the foreground. So I'm using a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of warmer color in my palette. It can be any warmer color, but I use a little bit of red, so there's kind of warmth in it. And you can also see I also applied the street walk using amber, and I also left some white bits for the fire hydrant because it's also a lighter value as well. So the next value I'm thinking about is it's the windows of this restaurant. Again, when I'm thinking it, this wash is just to kill the whiteness of the paper, just trying to get rid of the whiteness, and I'm trying to get the colors of the street trims, the windows of the restaurant. The trims are a little bit of a whitish, warmish colors. I'm using yellow ochre and a little bit of white paint in it. And once I'm happy with it, I'm going to add the fire hydrant, and you can see that I made a little bit smaller than what's in the reference. And it's the same thing for the bike rack as well. And you can also see that I also left some white bits at the top of this shop, leaving some white space for the windows as well, because there's also white trims in there. And you can also see that first I stained the wash with white, and now I'm focusing on the colors of the restaurant itself. So this bluish turquoise paint, which is kind of like a darker value than the white, so that's why I kept it for this one. And I'm trying to capture the pattern of the paint on the left hand side, and now I'm kind of like focusing on the bottom trim of it. And it's usually really easy to paint from left to right, because when you paint, I have a tendency of pressing my arm on my paper. Sometimes I peel off some paint from my wrist or from my arm. So I went again and I did the same thing on the top of it too. So now I'm focusing on the warmish color on this side. So I applied a wash. I used yellow ochre and a little bit of red in it. And I'm also using the blue frame on the left hand side now. And I'm also staining the wash again for the Queen Restaurant sign, making sure to get rid of it. And I'm also adding some lines, which is also at the top too. It's kind of like the trims. So you can also see there's a window, and there's also this this kind of like a chair, which is also resting on some of this I don't know what it's called. It's kind of like a wooden brownish color, and it's really nice foil because it's white against dark, and it also creates really nice contrast. Again, it's super dark in there, and I don't like to paint super dark in the beginning, because in watercolors we have to layer it slowly. Don't rush the process of adding the darks, because it's easier to layer from lower value to darker value, but it's really hard to apply a darker value and bringing down the value. Because in opaque medium you could do it, in watercolors you could do it, but it is not advisable to do it. And I'm just focusing on the windows now, and I'm also focusing on the doors on the front as well. And you can see that now we are just like putting the shape of everything together. So now you can see that everything sits. And this is thinking of the first wash as we are painting the light. So now I'm adding the windows for the darker value, and now I'm going to start adding the shadows for it. So in reality, when it's like a really afternoon scene, there's this warmer shadow happens on the white wall. So that's what I was trying to capture it. I'm just trying to add the warmish tones at the at like wherever the shop, which is on the left hand side. And I'm also adding this darker value in the trim, because most of the things that exist in reality, or that sits on a road or that sits on a ground, there's a little bit of a darker value that will anchor that shop. So that's exactly how I was trying to do it. And again, while I'm doing this, since I was doing this for a YouTube video, I don't want to capture as much as details, because I want to just capture the essence and show how to approach an urban street, then like painting all the details. So what I usually, my process is, I do a painting, and the first day I'll capture the essence of it and just capture the light and shadows, put a little bit of details in it. The next day I take it and I'll even push it further. So now we're officially finished our first wash. Now I'm going to start adding the shadows. So this part is really important, and this will make everything looks really nice and make it look realistic. It's just adding the shadows. And I see that I'm working on the wall, so I want to make sure that I take that blue and a little bit of this turquoise, and I'm just trying to add the shadows for it. So now I'll add the shadows for the door, which is kind of the shadow side. And I'll add some couple of strokes here and there to get the shadow pattern on the shop itself. So now I'm going to be adding the shadows for the trims, which is at the top, and for that I'm using a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of a dark paint in it. It's kind of like a warmish gray, and I want the value to be a little bit darker. And you can see that since it's wet, and I made some a darker value on top of it, so it just like gives this softer transition for it. So once we applied the sign on top of it, it will look that, you know, the shadow is casting underneath it. The reason I did this, because I know that the Queen Restaurant sign at the top is darker value. So when you paint in watercolors, we have to think in values and which is darker, which is lighter. That's why a lot of people struggle with, and that is really important. You can be okay with colors, you can cheat the colors, you know, you can put your own colors, but you can't cheat the value, because you have to get the value right to make things look realistic, because we are trying to getting the mother nature for the light and shadows. So I'm trying to add the shadows for the trims on the glass window, and you'd be surprised if you can't like see it in the smaller reference, but if you see it in reality, the trims have lot and lots of details, and you can just sit and render just for the trims. You can sit and render for days just to add the details. So now I'm focusing on the shadows on the windows. So now, and you can see that there's a sign beneath the Queen Street, the window. So I want to make sure capture it. That's why I made it a little bit. I'm going to leave it white, and now I'm adding the darker pattern inside the window. And you can also see that as soon as we add the window, the darker values, you can see that light started appearing. And you can also see that a really good painting contains a lot of range of values, like a lightest light and darkest dark. So that's what I was trying to achieve. And I'm trying to add the shadows for the chairs as well as for this at this platform, which is next to a sofa where people sit and dine. So I'm just trying to capture it. I kept it white, and I'm just adding a little bit of details here and there just to capture the essence of it. When you see this painting from far, and it will look realistic if you capture the lighting and shadows. So that's what I try to do in all my painting, especially in urban street. I try to capture the lighting and the shadows. The rest, it will sit in place, and we can add the details at top of it. Again, if you see our reference and if you see my painting, my restaurant's a little bit wider, but whereas the restaurants on the right hand side, it kind of looks like vertical. So because I'm painting in a 9x12, so I want to accommodate that restaurant in my own style as well as in my own composition. That's what I was trying to do. And you can see that even the colors look a little bit dull, but I made a little bit vibrant just to capture and make it look really realistic, as well as looks really nice and visually pleasing for people's eye. And now you can see that I added the shadows for the fire hydrant. You could see that just by adding the shadows for the bike rack and the fire hydrant, you can see that it separates the shop from the street walk. So this is another way of creating element of separation from foreground to the midground to the background. So now I'm adding the little bit of tertiary details. Again, I'm adding the sign for the Queen restaurant. Since we extended the composition, so I have to accommodate the Queen restaurant as well. So there's also a couple of these darker details there. I'm also adding that as well. Technically, if I squint my eyes, the values on the sign of the Queen Street is a little bit darker. So in that case, if you want to increase the value, just go and glaze over it. So this is like a tertiary shadows, I would say I can add, and I'm trying to get those darker values on the Queen Street too. So this the sign, which is also casting a shadow on the screen beneath it, so I'm trying to add that as well. And this is another way of adding a really nice foil for the shadows. And there's also shadow which is also aiding the Queen restaurant sign, so I'm going to capture it. And I'm also, when I do it, I'm constantly thinking about how the shadow affects the trims on the restaurant itself. And as soon as you add it, you're also giving someone looking at this painting where the shadow is coming from, because the strong lines which is on the top side, which is also take us into the painting as well. And I'm also adding the couple of marks for the street walk, which is also helps us to lead in, and it also shows a little bit of perspective as well. And I also added a little bit of pigeon just to show a little bit of scale, and I feel it's a little bit tiny, but I just left it as it is because I don't want the pigeons to take out all the things from my painting. Because in urban street, it's kind of like necessary to add some kind of thing to show the scale. Since we didn't add the figure, so I thought like a pigeon would be a really nice scale to add it. And now I'm using white paint to bring some of the highlights which I couldn't leave it, because the traditional way of painting is leaving the white highlights, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to leave highlights. So in some instances, if you can't do it, you can use white paint. I'm using Chinese white out of the tube. And again, when you do this, do it sparingly, and a lot of people abuse it. And make sure just to squint your eyes and they get the essence like where it need to be added. And I also tape my watercolor paper because it gives this really nice sharp edges around the corner of the painting, and which also shows how my painting will look like when it's framed. So now it's your turn. Use the techniques and the process I showed you today and apply in one of your urban street, and let's see what you can come up with. Thank you once again for watching this painting tutorial. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section below. If you have any other watercolor related topics you would like me to cover, reach out to me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or leave a comment on below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and be sure to hit the subscribe button to become a part of our learning community. By subscribing, you'll receive weekly upload notifications and stay updated on our channel, and share with your fellow artists, friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.